Hello fight fans, thanks for joining us at MMA Insider. Before we get rolling with today's news, show some love by hitting that like button and subscribing. Now let's uncover the latest happenings in MMA. Starting off, Ian Garry vows to retire Colby Covington in potential UFC showdown. Moving on, Max Holloway not ruling out fight against Islam Makhachev with UFC 300 win. Next, Robert Whittaker breaks down potential Dricus Du Plessis versus Israel Adesanya title fight. Lastly, Daniel Cormier explains why Colby Covington has to fight Ian Garry to keep his villain role. UFC star Ian Garry has reiterated his desire to take on Colby Covington as their feud continues to evolve. For the longest time now, Ian Garry has been a rising star in the UFC's welterweight division. In equal measure, though, he's also gained quite a few critics along the way. From trash talk to accusations about his wife, the Irishman has had to deal with a lot outside of the cage. A fair chunk of that criticism has come from divisional rival Colby Covington. Covington is attempting to get himself back into a position of prominence at 170 pounds, and it appears as if he's using Garry to do it. In a recent interview, Ian Garry didn't hold back when discussing his feelings about Colby. Here's what he said: "No matter how good Colby Covington ever could be or would be, he would never be able to beat me. I'm too elite, I'm too fast, I'm too technically brilliant. He just doesn't stand a chance. I'll step into that octagon and I'll retire him. That's my goal. My whole goal to when I fight Colby Covington is that he never puts on MMA gloves ever again." If Max Holloway can get through Justin Gaethje, he's not opposed to a fight with UFC lightweight champion Islam Makhachev. Later this month at UFC 300, Max Holloway is slated to meet Justin Gaethje with BMF gold on the line. The two stars will battle for 5 rounds over the ceremonial title. During a recent interview, Max Holloway discussed his future. There, the former featherweight champion admitted that he is interested in a potential fight with Islam Makhachev. While Islam Makhachev has been linked to a title fight with Dustin, Max Holloway believes he could be next as well. Here is what he said: "At the end of the day, I'm in a situation or I'm in a place where first things first is Gaethje. But I can go out there and get my hand raised like we plan on doing. There's a lot of fights that can be there. One of them is the 155-pound champ, which I think that would be a fun one. So at the end of the day, I ain't got no regrets. Stuff falls through all the time, but I'm still on this path to the championship. That's why I'm still here today." Robert Whittaker thinks Israel Adesanya has a good chance to piece up Dricus Du Plessis for 5 rounds. Du Plessis recently hinted on his social media that he will be fighting Adesanya in Perth at UFC 305 in August. It's an intriguing matchup and one that has been in the works for well over a year. Given that Whittaker has fought both of them, he has a good sense of how the fight will go, as he thinks there is a chance Adesanya will pick apart the champ. However, Whittaker says if Du Plessis is gonna win, it will be because he makes the fight awkward and not technical. Here is what he said: "I can see Adesanya just piecing him up for 5 rounds. But in saying that, Dricus is tough as nails and he's awkward. I can also see Dricus just getting in there and making it awkward and, you know, like, I don't know, taking him out of his rhythm. I think if Dricus does the same, he might have the same sort of success." UFC Hall of Famer Daniel Cormier thinks Colby Covington is fighting for relevancy amidst his ongoing feud with Ian Garry. Covington lost to UFC welterweight champion Leon Edwards by unanimous decision at UFC 296 in December. The loss was his 3rd in a UFC title fight, after 2 losses to Kamaru Usman. Covington is in a peculiar position in the UFC welterweight title picture. After moving to 0-3 in lineal UFC title fights, his chances at earning UFC gold are dwindling. Things have ramped up between Covington and Garry in recent weeks, and a potential fight between them remains a viable option. Cormier explained why Covington now has to accept the Garry fight to retain his pay-per-view viability. Competitively, you gotta beat the guy that wants to be the up-and-comer, because regardless of what you think of Ian Garry, he can fight. If you're gonna take this role or play the villain in everybody's story, the villain always has to get his comeuppance. When he has to stand in front of the sword and fight, he's gotta stand behind his words. Colby's gotta stand up on his words now, and if he beats him, he'll still continue to think he's in the championship picture. Covington's last win came against Jorge Masvidal at UFC 272. He's lost 2 of his last 3 fights, including the UFC 296 defeat to Edwards. Garry has surged up the welterweight ladder with recent victories against the likes of Jeff Neal and Neil Magny. The former Cage Warriors title holder is undefeated in his career, although Covington would give him by far his toughest opposition. If Covington still wants to vie for a title shot, a win over Garry could keep him in the conversation. As tensions increase between the two sides, Cormier encourages Covington to cash in. Thank you so much for tuning into today's video. Your dedication and support fuel our passion to bring you the latest and greatest in the MMA world. If you enjoyed today's news, please give us a thumbs up and share it with fellow MMA fans. Remember to subscribe to stay in the loop with daily MMA updates. We've got a lot of exciting news, interviews, and analysis coming your way every single day. Your engagement helps us grow and serve the MMA community even better. Once again, thank you for being an integral part of our daily MMA journey.